On today's episode of the Habitz podcast, we've got Baz from Client Robot, who'll be sharing with us his way to build a faster, sustainable business. So the first question is, what qualifies you to be our expert when it comes to growing a sustainable business?
So I've been running my business since 2007, but along the way I've had all my ups and downs and stuff like that. And I got this book called Profit First by this guy called Mike Winnet. I listened to it, I read it, I thought this is amazing. I started applying it to my business. First time I did it, it was a complete failure. Second time I did it a year later, and it absolutely transformed the way I do stuff. So Mike Winnet then emailed me. He's got a little trick for getting your email address, and emailed me and says, do you want to become a certified Profit First professional? I went on the training for it. So I now have been certified by Mike and his organisation to actually teach this method to other people. And at its core, it's all about making sure that you've got enough money to get through the next few months.
So that's really important to businesses, especially with what's happening at the moment.
Absolutely. Well, I think the stats, something like 70 or 80% of businesses die at 5 years because of cash flow. So it's not that they haven't got the work coming in, it's not that they haven't got the clients, it's just they haven't got the money in the bank to keep them going. Profit First is all about looking after your cash flow and making sure that you've got that money in the bank when you need it.
So you must see so many businesses that are in a bad state with their finances and stuff like that. Obviously, have you taught a lot of companies this?
Yeah, I've done a few, and the key thing, especially when you're a small business, maybe working on your own or with just a couple of people, rather than something that's grown up in like a bit more of a grown-up kind of business, it's very, very easy to see the money that's sat in your bank account and think that money's there and it's for me to spend. And so if you need to buy a new laptop or do an advertising campaign or something like that, you'll look in your bank and you'll go, I've got $3,000 in there, so if I want to spend $2,000 on such and such, then I'll go out and spend it. But that actually isn't your money, because you've got your tax to pay and you've got yourself to pay and you've got your staff to pay and your rent and all that stuff. So that $3,000 might actually only be 1,500 quid or £1,000 that you've actually got available to spend. So Profit First is about putting really simple mechanisms in place so that you don't spend the money that you don't have.
So one of the first things that people get wrong, or a bad habit would be, is not really having a grasp of how much money is actually theirs and where money should be allocated in the business.
Yeah, so it's not knowing what the money belongs to. Just thinking because it's sat there as a lump sum, then it's available to spend, and it's not. It's actually been allocated.
So not having a grasp of the numbers is probably the worst habit that people have. What other habits might they have?
Well, so I mean, part of the problem is that your accounts aren't designed. That your accounts are designed to keep you compliant with the tax office. They're not designed to help you as a business owner. And the best example of that is if you look at your profit and loss statement. The way the profit and loss is structured, you've got your income at the top, your revenue coming in, that's your top line. Then you've got minus all your expenses, so you subtract off whatever it is you're spending your money on, your wages and your rent and everything. And then equals at the bottom. It's like a little equation, and at the bottom you've got your profit, which is your bottom line. Now, when someone wants to grow their business, say you want to go from wherever you are today to becoming £1 million business, what they're saying is they want that top line to be £1 million. But in order to get there from where you are today to wherever you want to be, to get to that £1 million, you have to then start spending money, whether that's an advertising campaign or a fancy consultant or whatever it is that you do to get you to move you forwards. But every time you start spending money, what you're then doing is you're increasing that central section, the expenses part. And what you could be doing, what a lot of people are in danger of doing, is then making it so even though the top line's increasing, the expenses are increasing faster, and that means your bottom line is actually shrinking.
I can imagine a lot of people listening to this will recognize themselves in that, especially if they're a small business or they've only got a couple of employees or even self-employed.
Yeah.
So what are some of the ways that you would say, or some of the things that they could implement that could instantly make an impact on that situation?
So the very first step is to understand where your money's going. And this is detailed in the book. It's a very, very simple process where you basically, if you've got an accounts package, you look at your profit and loss statement, because the idea of your profit and loss statement is it's got money coming in at the top. That's like your top line. And then you've got all the stuff that you're spending money on. And then at the bottom, your bottom line is what's left over, which is your profit. So what you do is you look at where that money's going. And the key things you need to look at is how much is coming in, of that money that's coming in, how much are you actually paying out in tax? How much have you paid out in tax over the last year? Because you're not going to avoid tax. No matter how good your accountant is, you're still going to pay something in tax. So you need to have that money put aside. You need to look at how much you need to pay yourself, because if it's your business, it's there to support you. Most of us started our businesses because we wanted freedom and flexibility and a bit of money. And if you're just going out without week in, week out, month in, month out, because you can't afford to pay yourself, then what's the point of running a business?
Yeah.
And then there's all the other stuff. So how much are you spending on rent? How much are you spending on wages for other people? And all those sort of things. So you just categorize it up and you look at it, how much, say you got 10 grand come in over the last month or whatever it is, and 2 grand went on tax and 2 grand went on wages, and you paid yourself a grand. That means, and whatever was left over, I'm making up my numbers, but and say you got a grand left over. So that means your profit is 10% of that, is 1 grand out of that 10 grand. So that's 10%. Your tax is 2 grand. So that's 20%. Once you know those percentages, you can look at how much you're actually spending on general expenses. So in my little example there, that comes to 70%, say, not 60% rather. 60%, 70% is probably too high to be spending on general expenses. So what you want to do is actually put a bit more aside to pay yourself, and put a bit more aside to deal with, I don't know, whatever's unexpected. So what you do is you adjust those percentages and you say, right, so at the moment I'm spending 60% on general expenses. So next month I'm only going to spend 58% on general expenses. And the month after that, I'm going to bring it down to 56 or whatever. And so you bring it down because you can't make a huge change immediately.
Yeah.
But by making those really small, gradual changes, you train yourself to make do with less. And then you're also building up those reserves in the areas where you need it, so that when the crunch does happen, you've got that little bit of money put aside for what you need it for.
So then the good habit there would be you get a grip of your numbers, understand where you're spending, and then you can start to look to make cutbacks in certain areas, because you know you have to allocate money towards different pots, I suppose.
Well, and the really clever bit is there's this thing in the way your brain works, where when you look at something, you see it and you think that's all there is. In the book, Mike Winnet, he says he had this moment of revelation where he was talking about, he was watching like an infomercial, and they were talking about dieting, and he said this revelation was basically your best way to diet is to use smaller plates, because it doesn't matter if you load up the plate completely full, you want to eat everything that's on the plate. You're brought up that way. You're brought up to eat everything that's on your plate. But if you're having a smaller plate, you're just going to have less calories. So. And you won't even notice, because you're still seeing that you're eating 100% of the food.
Subconsciously there, you think that you've ate your full plate.
Yeah. So in Profit First, what we do is we open separate bank accounts, and you have an expenses account, which is the money that's available for you to spend. And you might have a tax account and a profit account and an owner's pay account and a staff wages account. But by separating them off and putting them into other banks, that means when you pick up your phone and you look at your business bank account and it says you've got 1,500 quid, you know that 1,500 quid is yours to spend and buy a laptop or whatever it is you want, because all the others are locked away in separate accounts that you're not looking at.
So do you think then, and I'm guessing this, so it's as soon as a payment comes in, so I invoice you for £1,000, as soon as that money comes in, that's getting separated as soon as it hits my bank account? Is that how you would do it?
Yeah, well, sort of.
Based on the percentages?
Absolutely. So what we do is we will have an income account. So for me, all my invoices, they've got that bank account on it, or my direct debits, they go straight into the income account. And then every Friday, I spend 15 minutes, and that's all it takes, is 15 minutes. I look at the balance in the income account. I go, oh, I've got 5 grand. Type 5 grand into my spreadsheet. It tells me transfer 1 grand into this account, this account, this account, and this account. So I spend 15 minutes on my phone just transferring the money out, and then I don't have to think about it again. Really, it's a really simple weekly rhythm just to get into.
Now, I know some people think it's simple to you because you're in that habit, and I know even when people have been told this is a great habit and you should follow it, actually no one likes change. Implementing it might be a bit difficult. So is there anything out there that's possible to help people achieve this, where they don't have to, work out their percentages and do that themselves?
the important bit is to get into the habit in the first place. So yeah, working out the percentages is a nice to have. Even if it's just as simple as taking a couple of £100 and moving it away and putting it aside into a separate account, that's the important bit. The mechanics of calculating your percentages and stuff like that, that's nice to have. That's if you want to go the whole hog. But certainly the important bit is just to stop thinking about all that pot of money as available to spend.
So if I'm a business owner now, or I've got a small business and I want help with getting grips with my finances, profit first, and be better with my numbers, where can I find you to find out more information?
You can either find me on LinkedIn, Baz Barua, very, very easy to find, or email me, baz@clientrobot.com.
So that was Baz sharing with us his tips to make your business more profitable. If you've got any money tips that will help our listeners, let us know in the usual places and join us next time for some more Habitz podcasts.